The towering obsidian walls of the citadel of Akros exploded in a blinding flash of plasma and shrapnel, scattering the armored bodies of Amian soldiers like broken toys. Kevin Henry and his team of human rebels watched the destruction through their tactical visors, the HUD displays tracking the damage assessments in real time. Months of planning and preparation had led to this moment, a precision strike against the heart of the Amian occupation on T's Prime. Armed with captured Amian stealth tech and guided by Yaka, an Amian defector with intimate knowledge of the Citadel's defenses, the rebel team had slipped past the sensor nets and sentry guns undetected. Once inside, they planted explosives at key structural points and command nodes, intending to cripple the base's ability to coordinate the planetary occupation. But as the rebels fought their way back out through smoke-filled corridors strewn with rubble and the bodies of fallen Amians, Kevin found himself face-to-face with Commander Zoltar, the base's infamous master of hand-to-hand combat. Zar attacked with blinding speed and inhuman strength, his powered armor and monomolecular blades more than a match for Kevin's battle-scarred combat exoskeleton. As they clashed in a desperate melee, Kevin's HUD flashed a warning from Yaka about a critical weakness in Amian physiology, a neural cluster at the base of the skull that, when struck with sufficient force, could render an Amian unconscious. With a final burst of desperate strength and agility, Kevin ducked under Zar's slashing blades and drove his armored fist into the weak point with a sickening crunch. Zar crumpled to the floor as Kevin scooped up the fallen commander's identity disk and sprinted for the extraction point where his team was waiting. As their hijacked Amian transport lifted off and screamed away from the Citadel, the nighttime sky lit up with the massive secondary explosions of the team's sabotage, the roar of the blast drowning out their victorious war cries. But this was only the beginning. News of the attack would spread to every corner of the galaxy, proof that the human rebels were no longer content to hide in the shadows. The Amian Empire would finally understand the fury it had unleashed by pushing humanity to the brink. When humans got angry, the galaxy itself trembled, and now the Terrans were out for blood. The Imperial throne would learn to fear the day they first underestimated the sons and daughters of Earth. The stolen Amian transport streaked through the void, its engines straining as Kevin Henry pushed the vessel to its limits. In the hold behind him, the rest of the rebel team tended to their wounds and equipment, the adrenaline of their daring assault on the citadel of Akros still coursing through their veins. "Hell of a job back there, Yaka," Kevin called over his shoulder to the Amian defector hunched over a flickering console. That intel on their weak point was a lifesaver. Yaka looked up, his scarred blue face splitting into a fierce grin. "Felt good to finally strike a blow against those bastards, but this is only the beginning." Kevin nodded grimly as he angled the transport towards the distant glimmer of Valhalla, the hidden rebel base that had become their sanctuary in a hostile galaxy. The Amians would be out for blood now, but so were the Terrans, and they were just getting started. As the transport settled onto the camouflaged landing pad deep within Valhalla's misty jungles, Kevin and his team were met by a throng of eager new recruits, their eyes shining with the same fire that burned within the veteran rebels. Word of the Citadel attack had spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of resistance across the subjugated worlds. Among the fresh faces was Alaros, a willowy young woman with a keen intellect that belied her delicate features. Kevin had heard of her talent for unraveling the secrets of alien technology, a skill that would be invaluable in the battles to come. In the days that followed, as the rebels worked to integrate their new members and hammer out their next move, Yaka came to Kevin with a revelation that would change the course of their struggle. The Amian defector had uncovered the truth behind the enemy's technological supremacy, a rare mineral called Etherium, jealously guarded and controlled by the Amian royal kingdom. "Their supplies are running out," Yaka explained, his voice tight with urgency. "They've launched a campaign to secure new sources, including on Earth. If they succeed, their grip on the galaxy will be unbreakable." Kevin felt a cold fury settle in his gut as he absorbed the implications. The Amians weren't just content to oppress and exploit, they were willing to bleed entire worlds dry to feed their insatiable hunger for power. "Then we hit them where it hurts," he growled, his mind racing with possibilities. We choke off their Ethereum supply, and we show the galaxy the truth behind their dominion. With Alara's help, the rebels began to craft a plan. Reverse engineering captured Amian tech to even the odds. They struck hard and fast, raiding mining operations and supply convoys, each victory fueling the flames of resistance across the stars. And as whispers of their exploits reached the far corners of the galaxy, Kevin found himself face to face with emissaries from other oppressed species, each seeking to forge an alliance against their common enemy. Among them was Kerala, a fierce Vargon warrior whose piercing gaze held the weight of her people's suffering. "Help us free our world," she implored, her voice ringing with a steel forged in the fires of subjugation. "And we will stand with you until the last Amian falls." Kevin hesitated, the old wounds of betrayal still fresh in his mind. But as he looked into Kerala's eyes, he saw a reflection of his own persistence, an unbreakable will to fight for the future they had been denied. "We do it together," he said at last, clasping her forearm in a warrior's grip. "And when the dust settles, the galaxy will know that it was the unity of the oppressed that brought the mighty low." As the rebel base buzzed with newfound purpose, a sense of destiny hung heavy in the air. The road ahead would be drenched in blood and sacrifice, but for the first time, the sons and daughters of Earth and their alien allies dared to dream of a future free from the yoke of Amian tyranny. The seeds of a revolution had been planted, and the galaxy itself trembled in anticipation of the coming storm. The euphoria of victory was short-lived. As Kevin and his team pored over intelligence reports in Valhalla's war room, a grim reality set in. Amian reprisals had begun, swift and merciless. "They're targeting civilian populations," Yaka growled, his blue skin pale with anger as he gestured at a holographic display. "Entire colonies wiped out." Kerala slammed her fist on the table, leaving a dent in the metal. "We must strike back. My people burn for vengeance." Kevin's mind focused as he studied the casualty reports. Each number represented a life snuffed out, a family torn apart. He looked up, meeting the eyes of his diverse team. "We will, but not with blind rage. We need a plan that will cripple their control once and for all." Alara stepped forward, her slender fingers dancing over a datapad. "I've been analyzing their communication networks. There's a nexus, a central hub on a heavily fortified world. If we could broadcast from there, we could expose their atrocities to the entire galaxy." Yaka finished, his eyes widening. Kevin nodded, a dangerous glint in his eye. "Nexus. That's our target." The plan came together quickly. 2 teams, a frontal assault to draw attention, and a covert infiltration to seize the communications array. As they prepared, Kevin found Kerala sharpening her vibroblade with precise, controlled motions. "Your people have suffered greatly," he said softly. Kerala looked up, her alien features set in dogged perseverance. "As have yours. Today we fight as one." The assault on Nexus was chaos incarnate. Kevin's team tore through the outer defenses like a plasma torch through sheet metal. Kerala was a blur of motion, her blade singing as it cleaved through Amian armor. Yaka's inside knowledge allowed them to exploit weak points, turning the defenders' own systems against them. Meanwhile, Alara led her team through cramped maintenance tunnels, the air thick with the smell of ozone and lubricant. They emerged into the lower levels of the command center, dispatching guards with ruthless efficiency. Victory seemed within reach when a familiar figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking Kevin's path to the central chamber. Commander Zar, now more machine than Amian, his cybernetic limbs whirring as he assumed a combat stance. "Did you think you'd seen the last of me, human?" Zar's voice was a metallic rasp. Kevin barely had time to activate his armor's energy shield before Zar was upon him, the Amian's augmented strength sending him flying into a nearby wall, the impact rattling his teeth. He rolled to avoid a follow-up strike that left a crater in the floor. As they clashed, alarms blared. Throughout the facility, Kerala and Yaka fought desperately to hold off waves of reinforcements, but they were being pushed back. In the communications room, Alara's fingers flew over alien consoles as her team barricaded the doors against the pounding of Amian troops. Kevin struggled to his feet, tasting blood. Zar's new enhancements made him faster, stronger, but as the cyborg charged again, Kevin saw a flicker of something in his opponent's organic eye. Fear. He dodged, letting Czar's momentum carry him past, and in that split second, Kevin struck. Not at Czar's armored body, but at the base of his skull, the same weak point he'd exploited before. There was a sickening crunch as his armored fist connected, and Czar went down hard. "Alara, now!" Kevin shouted into his comm as he sprinted for the central chamber. The young scientist's voice came back, strained but triumphant. "We're in, broadcasting now." A pulse of energy rippled through the facility as the truth was unleashed upon the galaxy. Evidence of Amian atrocities, the Ethereum shortage, all of it beamed to every corner of known space. As the rebels regrouped and fought their way back to their ships, the first reports of uprisings on other worlds began to trickle in. They had struck a blow that would shake the foundations of the Amian Empire, but as Kevin looked at his battered team, he knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy was changing, and humanity would be at the forefront of that change, for better or for worse. The echoes of their Nexus broadcast reverberated across the galaxy, igniting sparks of rebellion on countless worlds. Kevin Henry stood before a makeshift podium in Valhalla's crowded war room, his voice carrying to every corner as he addressed the assembled rebels. "We've struck a blow, but our fight is far from finished. The Amians will retaliate, and we must be ready, but we are no longer alone." He activated a holographic display, revealing a galaxy map dotted with pinpricks of light, each representing a group that had answered their call to arms. Murmurs of excitement rippled through the crowd. "Our next target," Kevin continued, zooming in on a remote system, "is here. An Ethereum refinery on the outer rim. We cut off their supply, we cripple their war machine." As the briefing concluded, a gruff voice cut through the chatter. "I know that facility." All eyes turned to the speaker, a hulking, battle-scarred alien with mottled green skin. Garrick, the Corian mercenary who had arrived with the latest wave of recruits. "My people mined Ethereum there," Garrick growled, his eyes burning with barely suppressed rage, "until the Amians decided it was more efficient to work us to death." Kevin studied the Corian, recognizing the smoldering hatred that mirrored his own. "We could use your expertise, Garrick. Are you in?" The mercenary's massive hand engulfed Kevin's as they clasped arms. "Until every last Amian pays for what they've done." Hours later, their strike team ghosted through the void in a captured Amian transport. Kevin ran through final checks on his exosuit, the familiar routine steadying his nerves. Around him, humans and aliens alike prepared for battle. Kerala sharpening her vibroblade, Yaka triple-checking their stealth systems. The refinery loomed before them, a sprawling complex of storage tanks and processing towers. As they began their approach, alarms suddenly blared to life. "We've been made!" Yaka shouted from the pilot seat. "Amian response fighters incoming!" Kevin's mind raced. "New plan! Yaka, get us as close as you can. We're going in hot." The transport screamed towards the refinery, weaving through a hail of plasma fire. At the last moment, Yaka pulled up, skimming the facility's outer walls. The strike team leaped from the cargo bay, propulsion packs flaring as they scattered across the complex. Kevin hit the ground rolling, his armor absorbing the impact. He came up firing his particle rifle, cutting down Amian guards before they could react. Across the compound, explosions bloomed as his team breached key structures. "Reactor control is ours," Alara's voice crackled over the comm. Beginning overload sequence. Kevin fought his way towards the main storage tanks, Garrick at his side. The Corian was a force of nature, his massive frame belying incredible speed as he tore through Amian defenses. They were nearly at their objective when a familiar, hated voice rang out. "Well, well, if it isn't the Terran dog and his pet alien." Commander Zillion stood before them, flanked by a squad of elite troops, his Amian eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure as they fell on Garrick. "I remember you, Corian. I thought I'd killed the last of your kind." Garrick roared, a primal sound of pure hatred, and charged forward, shrugging off plasma bolts like raindrops. Kevin provided covering fire, his rifle sighting through Zillion's guards. The refinery rocked with secondary explosions as the reactor meltdown began. "Kevin's comm cray." He turned to call Garrick, but the words died in his throat. The Corian stood at the base of the main storage tank, fingers flying over a control panel. "Get your people out," Garrick growled, not looking up. "I'll make sure this place burns." Kevin hesitated, torn between duty and the urge to stand with his comrade. Garrick's eyes met his, a lifetime of pain and purpose conveyed in that single glance. "Go!" the Corian roared. "Make it mean something." Gritting his teeth, Kevin sprinted for the extraction point. All around him, the refinery was coming apart at the seams. He threw himself into the waiting transport, turning back just in time to see a massive fireball engulf the main tank. As they rocketed away from the inferno, Kevin allowed himself a moment of grief for Garrick, but there was no time for mourning. Not yet. Their victory would inspire others, and the true war was only beginning. In the smoldering ruins of the refinery, Commander Zillion pulled himself from the wreckage, his armor slagged and smoking, his eyes blazing with cold fury as he activated his emergency beacon. The Amian royal kingdom would pay any price to crush this rebellion, and Zillion would be the sword that cut out its heart. The destruction of the Ethereum refinery sent shockwaves through the Amian Empire. As Kevin and his team regrouped on Valhalla, reports flooded in of uprisings across occupied worlds. The spark of rebellion had ignited into a raging inferno. "We've got an opportunity," Alara said, her fingers dancing over a holographic display. The Venusian mining colony of Ishtar. It's a key Ethereum source, but our intel suggests their defenses are stretched thin. Kevin studied the rotating model of Ishtar's sprawling industrial complex. A prime target. We hit them there, we cut off another major fuel supply. Karala's eyes gleamed with predatory anticipation. My Vargon warriors thirst for battle. We stand ready. The plan came together swiftly. A joint human Vargon assault force would strike Ishtar, with Alara's tech team providing crucial support. As their ships entered Venus's sulfurous atmosphere, Kevin felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the calm before the storm. Ishtar loomed before them, a maze of refineries and habitation domes. Initiating cyber assault now, Alara's voice crackled over the comm. The colony's defensive particle cannons fell silent. Kevin's assault team burst from their dropships, meeting minimal resistance as they stormed the main gate. Karala's Vargon tore through confused Amian troops like a whirlwind of blades and plasma fire. In the command center, Amian Commander Vortex snarled in frustration as his systems failed. "Fall back," he barked. "We cannot hold." The rebels swept through Ishtar's sectors, freeing thousands of human and alien slaves. Kevin spotted a group of emaciated workers cowering in a holding pen. He blasted the lock, extending his hand to a wide-eyed child. "You're free," he said simply. Words spread like wildfire. Newly liberated miners joined the fight, overwhelming the retreating Amians with sheer numbers. Within hours, Ishtar fell. The colony erupted in celebration. Humans and aliens alike embraced their liberators. Kevin found himself hoisted onto the shoulders of a cheering crowd, their voices chanting his name. Karala approached, her blade stained with Amian blood. "A great victory," she said, clasping Kevin's arm, "but we must be vigilant. The Empire will not take this lightly." Her words proved prophetic. As the rebels worked to fortify Ishtar, long-range sensors detected a massive Amian battle fleet on approach. At its head was the flagship of Fleet Commander Zillion, the butcher of a dozen worlds. "Everyone to battle stations," Kevin ordered. "Civilian evacuation is priority 1. Ishtar's skies turned to fire as Zillion's fleet unleashed a relentless orbital bombardment. The colony's hastily repaired defenses crumbled under the assault. Kevin and his core team found themselves pushed back to the massive central refinery complex. "We're cut off," Yaka reported grimly. "No way to punch through to the evac ships." Kevin's mind raced. They needed a game-changer, something to level the playing field against Zillion's overwhelming firepower. His eyes fell on the refinery's towering Ethereum processing reactors. "Yaka," he said, a dangerous glint in his eye, "how volatile is unrefined Ethereum?" The alien's eyes widened in understanding. "Extremely. If we could destabilize the reactor core, we'd have one hell of a bomb." "Let's move," Kevin finished. They fought their way to the refinery's heart, reprogramming safety systems and bypassing fail-safes. As they worked, a transmission cut through their comms, Zillion's voice dripping with cruel satisfaction. "Attention, vermin," the Amian commander sneered. "I have a gift for you." The feed switched to a grainy video. Karala, battered and bound, stared defiantly at the camera. Zillion's blade flashed, and the feed cut to static. A wave of anguish swept through the rebel forces. Kevin felt it too, a cold knot of grief and fury in his gut. But there was no time for mourning. "Evac status," he barked into his comm. "Last transport's launching now," came the response. "But we've got heavy casualties and Zillion's forces are closing in fast." Kevin looked at Yaka, saw the same grim willpower mirrored in his alien friend's eyes. They both knew what had to be done. "All remaining personnel, fall back to the evacuation zone," Kevin ordered. "Yaka and I will handle the detonation sequence." Protests filled the comm, but Kevin silenced them. "That's an order. Get our people out of here." As the last defenders retreated, Kevin and Yaka worked feverishly to prime the reactors. The refinery shook with the impact of Amian bombardment. They were out of time. Kevin's finger hovered over the final command sequence. He thought of Earth, of all the worlds suffering under Amian rule, of Kerala, and every life lost in this war for freedom. "For freedom," he said softly and pressed the button. The world turned white. Miles above Ishtar, the rebel evacuation ships watched in awe as a miniature sun bloomed on the Venusian surface. The Amian invasion force vanished in the conflagration, Zillion's flagship consumed by the inferno. As the light faded, the full impact of their victory became clear. Ishtar was gone, but with it, a critical source of Amian fuel production, and the price paid by Kevin, Yaka, and their comrades would not be forgotten. Across 100 worlds the story spread, how a small band of rebels had struck a crippling blow against the mighty Amian war machine, how Kevin Henry and his allies had given their lives so others might live free. The Amian Empire had suffered its first true defeat, and for the occupied peoples of the galaxy, a new hope was born. The destruction of Ishtar sent shockwaves through the galaxy. As news spread of the devastating blow against the Amian Empire, hope kindled in the hearts of the oppressed across 100 worlds. Whispers of rebellion grew into shouts of defiance. On the rebel base world of Valhalla, Marcus Calder stood before a holographic display of the known galaxy, his weathered face etched with lines of grief and persistence as he studied the shifting battle lines. "We've struck them hard," he said to the assembled war council, "but the Amians are far from defeated. We need to press our advantage." Alara, her arm still bandaged from the wound sustained on Ishtar, leaned forward. "I may have something," she said, tapping commands into her datapad. A new image flickered to life. A heavily fortified world of gleaming spires and sprawling industrial complexes. "Chiron," Marcus breathed, recognizing the Amian throne world. Alara nodded. "Our intelligence network has uncovered something big, a secret Ethereum stockpile hidden right under the royals' noses." The council erupted in excited chatter. Tyrus, a former Amian soldier who had defected to the rebellion, raised a hand for silence. "It's a tempting target," he said, his voice gravelly from years of barking orders, "but Chiron's defenses are impenetrable. We'd be throwing away lives for nothing." Marcus's eyes glinted with a dangerous light. "Not if we go in quiet," he said. "A small team using your inside knowledge of Amian security protocols." He outlined his audacious plan, a surgical strike to infiltrate the royal palace, locate the depot's coordinates, and signal in the rebel fleet for a precision orbital bombardment. Hours later, a cloaked rebel shuttle slipped past Chiron's outer defensive grid. Marcus led the strike team through winding maintenance tunnels, guided by Tyrus's intimate knowledge of the palace layout. They emerged into a cavernous data center. As Alara worked to bypass the security systems, the distinctive heavy tread of Crimson guards echoed from a nearby corridor. "Company," Tyrus hissed, readying his weapon. The air filled with the sizzle of plasma bolts as the elite Amian troops burst in. Marcus dove for cover, returning fire with practiced precision. Tyrus was a blur of motion, his intimate knowledge of Crimson Guard tactics allowing him to anticipate and counter their every move. Alara's fingers flew over the hollow interface, sifting through terabytes of classified data. "I've got it!" she shouted over the din of battle. "But it's encrypted. We'll have to take the physical data core." Marcus swore under his breath. A simple coordinates transmission had just become a far more dangerous extraction. They fought their way back through the palace, Amian reinforcements dogging their every step. In a narrow hallway, a plasma bolt caught Alara in the side. She stumbled, crying out in pain. "Leave me," she gasped, pressing the data core into Tyrus's hands. "Complete the mission." Tyrus hesitated, torn between duty and loyalty. Alara's eyes blazed with tenacity. "Go!" she snarled, raising her weapon to provide covering fire. With a final, anguished look, Tyrus sprinted after Marcus. They burst out onto a landing pad where their shuttle waited, engines spooling up. As they lifted off, the palace defenses opened up, filling the air with searing energy bolts. Safely in hyperspace, Marcus and Tyrus pored over the stolen data. The sheer scale of the Ethereum stockpile staggered them. If they could destroy it, it would cripple the Amian war machine. On Chiron, alarms blared throughout the royal district. In the High Throne's opulent audience chamber, Commander Zillion knelt before his ruler, head bowed in shame. "Impossible!" the High Throne snarled, his ornate robes swirling as he paced. "How did these vermin penetrate our defenses?" Zillion, still bearing scars from his near death on Ishtar, kept his voice steady. "Unknown, Your Eminence. We are redoubling security and— Enough!" the High Throne roared. "Find them. Crush them, or it will be your head adorning the palace gates." As Zillion hurried to comply, he unknowingly provided the final piece of intelligence the rebels needed. Coded transmissions from the palace allowed waiting rebel ships to pinpoint the depot's exact location. The rebel armada burst from hyperspace, led by the battleship Defiant. Marcus stood on the bridge, watching as Chiron's surface blazed with weapons fire. "All ships concentrate fire on these coordinates," he ordered, transmitting the depot's location. For hours, the space above Chiron boiled with combat. Rebel ships dodged and weaved through storms of plasma, hammering away at the planet's defenses. On the surface, the Ethereum stockpile's containment fields began to fail under the relentless bombardment. A blinding flash lit up the Defiant's view screens where Chiron's capital had stood. A roiling fireball expanded outward, devouring everything in its path. Marcus sagged against a console, the weight of what they had done settling over him. They had struck a crippling blow against the Amians, but at a terrible cost in innocent lives. As the rebel fleet jumped to safety, leaving Chiron a smoking ruin, Marcus knew the war had entered a new and deadlier phase. The Amians would not rest until they had their revenge, and somewhere in the void of space, the High Throne's War Council convened, plotting their retaliation against the upstart humans who had dared to wound them so grievously. The destruction of Chiron sent shockwaves through the Amian Empire. In the smoldering ruins of the royal palace, the High Throne's eyes blazed with cold fury as he surveyed holographic reports of the damage. "Enough," he snarled, silencing the nervous advisors surrounding him. "Summon Supreme Commander Drenthax." Within hours, a towering figure strode into the makeshift war room. Drenthax's cybernetic implants pulsed with a sinister energy, his face a mask of calculated ruthlessness. "Your command, Eminence?" he asked, his voice void of emotion.